They say history is written by the victors, but what happens when victory comes at the cost of everything you once believed in? My name is Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Vale, and this is the story of how humanity went too far and why we had no choice. The 27th century brought peace through exhaustion. After the star collapse wars, the galaxy carved itself into neat territorial zones, each species nursing wounds too deep to heal but too fresh to forget. We called them red zones regions, where the border between war and peace was measured not in light years, but in single hyperspace jumps. One wrong move, one ship crossing the line, and the galaxy would burn again. Humanity had earned its place among the stars, not through conquest, but through something far more dangerous, our capacity for creative chaos. Other species fought with precision, with doctrine, with predictable patterns. We fought with our imaginations unleashed, and that terrified them more than any superweapon. The Volari Star Alliance had always been our most cordial enemies. They appreciated order structure, the beautiful mathematics of controlled thought. In their society, ideas were weapons that required regulation. Creativity, a virus to be contained. They looked at humanity and saw chaos incarnate, a species that thrived on unpredictability and called it freedom. For 3 decades, we maintained an uneasy détente. The red line between our territories stood as a monument to mutual assured destruction. Neither side crossed it. Neither side wanted to. Until they did. I was reviewing tactical formations on the bridge of my destroyer, the Relentless Purpose, when the priority alert came through. The message was brief, clinical in its horror. Trisis Research Station compromised. Volari forces occupy. 42 scientific personnel missing. No warning given. Diplomatic channels unresponsive. Trisis, a backwater planet housing one of our most promising research facilities dedicated to theoretical physics and something called cognitive restructuring technology. The kind of science that made the Valerie nervous, not because it was a weapon, but because it expanded the boundaries of what was possible to think. The orders came within hours. Stand down. Do not engage. Allow diplomatic channels to resolve the situation. The Tactical Response Fleet. My fleet would remain in reserve, while politicians tried to talk sense into a species that had just crossed the one line we'd all agreed never to cross. I stared at those orders for a long time, feeling something cold and hard settling in my chest. 42 scientists, captured without warning, being held in what the Volari called a cognitive restructuring center, a euphemism that made my skin crawl. Among those 42 names was one that stopped my heart cold. Dr. Elira Vale, my ex-wife, supposedly killed in a research accident 3 years ago. Apparently that had been a lie to keep her new work classified. I called Lieutenant Ramos to my ready room. She was young, brilliant, and had that particular breed of recklessness that made her perfect for the Tactical Response Fleet. When she entered, I could see she already knew what I was thinking. "Sir, the orders are clear," she said before I could speak. "We're to stand down." "The orders are clear," I agreed. But orders don't always align with justice. Her eyes lit up with something dangerous. "What did you have in mind, sir?" Over the next 6 hours, I assembled what would later be called Vale's Revenge. 36 destroyers from 3 different battle groups, all with commanders who understood that sometimes the chain of command becomes a chain around your neck. We called it a tactical readiness exercise. Officially, we were running deep space maneuvers. Unofficially, we were about to rewrite the rules of engagement for our entire civilization. The journey into Volari space required 3 precision hyperspace jumps, each one calculated to avoid their sensor nets. We emerged in the shadow of a dead system, 12 hours behind their main defensive line. Intelligence had located the primary staging area, where our people were being held, a massive orbital complex called Dominion's Gate. Through long-range sensors, we saw it a fortress that looked like a mechanical flower, its petals bristling with defensive platforms. At its center, the Cognitive Restructuring Center, a place where they broke mines and rebuilt them according to Valari specifications. I thought about Elira. Brilliant and stubborn, and probably driving her captors insane with her refusal to cooperate. The woman who'd walked away from our marriage because she couldn't stand watching me prepare for wars that might never come. Now she was trapped in a war that had already begun. The tactical briefing took place aboard the Relentless Purpose. 36 commanders gathered in the main hangar, their faces grim in the artificial light. I showed them the intelligence reports, the layout of Dominion's gate, the estimated defensive capabilities. The Valari think like engineers, I told them. Everything precise, everything according to doctrine. They'll expect us to hit them head on or try to sneak in. They won't expect what we're actually going to do. Lieutenant Ramos stepped forward with the tactical display. We call it the Chaos variant, sirs. Every ship takes a different approach vector. Every ship carries different ordnance. No two attack patterns the same. We don't try to outfight them, we try to confuse them to death. Commander Singh of the Unforgiven Truth raised her hand. What about their fleet intelligence shows at least 100 ships protecting that facility? I smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. That's where the minefield comes in. The plan was insane. It violated every rule of space combat ever written. It required precision timing, flawless execution, and a degree of controlled chaos that could only come from human minds. We deployed the mines first, not the old-fashioned explosives, but directional gravity wells that would force ships to follow specific vectors. We called them shepherd mines because they herded rather than destroyed. We seeded them in patterns that looked random but were carefully designed to funnel enemy ships into predetermined killing zones. Then came the attack itself. We dropped out of hyperspace, scattered across a sphere 50,000 kilometers in diameter, each ship following its own carefully planned trajectory toward Dominion's gate. To the Valari sensors, it must have looked like we were coming from everywhere at once, because we were. The first wave consisted of 8 ships carrying shaped nuclear missiles. They screamed toward the station's defense platforms, each missile programmed with a different approach protocol. The Valari defensive grid lit up like a constellation trying to track and intercept threats coming from 8 different directions simultaneously. That's when the second wave hit. 12 destroyers equipped with armor-piercing plasma howitzers opened fire in a synchronized bombardment. But instead of targeting the same areas, each ship hit a different sections of the station's defensive shell. The Valari found themselves trying to coordinate repairs and countermeasures across dozens of scattered breach points. By the time they realized what we were doing, it was too late. The Valari fleet moved to intercept us, and that's when they found the minefield. Their ships following standard tactical doctrine moved in formation, and the shepherd mines activated. Gravity wells yanked their vessels off course, forcing them into the channels we'd prepared. Channels where the third wave was waiting. 18 destroyers emerged from hyperspace, right in the middle of the Valerie. Formation, point-blank range weapons already hot. But instead of the expected broadside exchange, each of our ships immediately executed a different, evasive pattern. Some spiraled, some rolled, some simply dropped below the plane of battle. The Valari gunners, trained to track predictable targets, couldn't lock onto ships that seemed to be dancing rather than fighting. The whole engagement lasted 37 minutes. When it was over, Dominion's gate was a gutted shell, its defense grid dark, its cognitive restructuring center breached in a dozen places. The Valari fleet was scattered, their flagship dead in space, their admiral requesting terms. I led the boarding party myself. The corridors of the station were a maze of twisted metal and emergency lighting. We followed the schematics to the research wing where the prisoners were held. I found her in a cell designed to look like a laboratory, the Valari's idea of psychological manipulation. Elira was sitting at a desk working on equations that covered every available surface. When the door opened and she saw me, her face went through a dozen emotions before settling on something I couldn't quite read. Marcus? Her voice was different, tired, but not broken. I should have known you'd come. though technically you're supposed to be following orders not to. Orders change, I said, helping her stand. She was thinner than I remembered, and there were lines around her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and constant vigilance. Are you hurt? They tried to reprogram my memories, she said matter-of-factly. Replace my knowledge of human cognitive theory with their version. It didn't work. Apparently the human mind is more resilient than they thought. Around us, the other rescued scientists emerged from their cells. 42 people who'd been written off as casualties of an impossible diplomatic situation. 42 people whose continued existence would reshape the balance of power in this sector of the galaxy. Admiral Craze found us as we prepared to evacuate. The Valari commander was tall even by his species standards, his black and silver uniform immaculate despite the destruction around him. He moved with the careful precision of a ant whose worldview had just shattered. Lieutenant Colonel Vale, he said, his translation device rendering his words in perfectly modulated English. Your reputation for creative tactics is well deserved. We were prepared for human aggression, not human artistry. You crossed the red line, I told him. You took our people. What did you expect? We expected negotiation, diplomacy. We expected your government to trade for their return. His alien features conveyed what might have been confusion. We did not expect a single officer to risk interstellar war for 42 individuals. That's the difference between us, Elira interjected, stepping up beside me. You see 42 individuals. We see 42 pieces of humanity, each one irreplaceable. The Admiral's attention focused on her. Dr. Vale, you were uncooperative. Your resistance to our cognitive restructuring process was remarkable. I'm sure it was, she said dryly. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have a galaxy to get back to. As we prepared to leave, Admiral Craze made one final attempt at understanding. Colonel, your actions here will have consequences. Your government did not authorize this operation. You've acted without orders, violated our sovereignty, destroyed our facility. Your career is over. Perhaps your freedom as well. Was it worth it? I thought about it for a moment, looking around at the scientists we'd rescued at the destroyed Cognitive Restructuring Center, at the symbol of Valari power brought low by human unpredictability. Admiral, I said finally 3 months ago, you thought you knew the boundaries of this conflict. You thought you understood how far humanity would go to protect our own. You thought wrong. The journey home was quieter than the journey out. Our ships moved in formation, no longer needing the chaos of battle. In my ready room, Elira and I sat across from each other, years of separation and recent trauma creating a space between us that felt both vast and intimate. They showed me files, she said suddenly. Research data about human aggression patterns. They were trying to understand how to predict our behavior, control it. They couldn't comprehend that our strength comes from our unpredictability. What did you tell them? She smiled. And for a moment, I saw the woman I'd married. I told them they were asking the wrong question. They wanted to know how humans fight. I told them they should be asking why humans fight. And why do we fight? For each other, she said simply. For the right to be unpredictable, creative, chaotic. For the freedom to think thoughts that have never been thought before. 3 days later, we emerged from hyperspace at the edge of human territory. Waiting for us was the entire home fleet, 200 ships in full battle formation. For a moment, I thought they were there to arrest us. Instead, they formed an honor guard. The political fallout was immediate and severe. I was recalled to Earth, court-martialed, and stripped of my command. The operation was officially condemned as a rogue action that nearly sparked a galactic war. Unofficially, everything changed. The Valari withdrew from the Red Line, establishing a new buffer zone 3 systems back. Other species took note of what had happened at Dominion's gate. Humanity's restraint had been mistaken for weakness, our chaos for burster noise. They wouldn't make that mistake again. The trial was a media sensation. I sat in the defendant's chair, accepting full responsibility for the operation. When asked if I would do it again, I said yes without hesitation. The sentence was dismissal from service and confinement to Earth. I would never command a ship again, never lead soldiers into battle. It seemed a small price to pay. Elira came to see me the night before my sentencing. We walked through the gardens of the military complex, neither of us speaking for a long time. They offered me a position, she said finally, head of the new Cognitive Defense Institute, developing countermeasures to the kind of mental manipulation the Valari tried on me. Will you take it? Only if you'll work with me, she said, stopping to face me. As a civilian, of course. I hear you're about to become one. I laughed, surprising myself. Partners again? Partners again. Years later, people still ask me if I went too far. If the risk was worth it. If 42 lives justified the actions that reshaped our relationship with half the galaxy. I tell them this. There are lines that should never be crossed, and when someone crosses them, you make sure they understand the consequences. The Valari thought they knew humanity, our weaknesses, our predictability, our limits. They learned that our greatest strength has always been our refusal to accept limits. We went too far, yes, but sometimes going too far is the only way to show others exactly where the line should be drawn. And sometimes, just sometimes, it's the only way to bring your people home. The galaxy remembers Dominion's Gate. They remember 36 human ships appearing from hyperspace like a force of controlled nature, turning military doctrine inside out through sheer magnificent chaos. They remember that humanity, when pushed, doesn't just push back, we rewrite the rules entirely. I removed my medals before leaving the courtroom, setting them on the table like pieces of a life I was done living. But I kept my wedding ring, the one Elira had given back to me during the flight home from Valari space. Some things are worth keeping. Some things are worth fighting for. Some things are worth going too far to protect. That's the human way. That's who we are. That's why they'll never see us coming until we're already there, remaking their universe, one impossible choice at a time. We are humanity, and we've never known when to stop.